At our appointment. I'm Edward Torello, Chairman of the Bucks County School Webinar Program, and welcome to our webinar entitled What You Should Know About Business Liability Insurance. Before we begin, I'm just going to give you a half-a-minute commercial on SCORE, in case you don't know who we are. SCORE is a national organization with about 290 chapters nationwide. There's about 10,000 mentors that are involved. And here in Bucks County, we have approximately 70 to 80 mentors. We offer a service which is free, and our mission is very simple. It's to help small businesses either start one, grow, or to thrive. And we do this all with our free mentoring services. If in fact you're interested in one of our mentors to help you, we'll be putting in the chat our internet logo and material so that you can just click on. And once you do and you get in there, there's a spot called I Need a Mentor. You just click on that and we will take care of it from there. This session will be recorded, and afterwards you will receive a copy of the recording and the slides. So you don't have to take copious notes. It's just more important to actually pay attention to what's being said. If you have a question, please put the question in the Q&A, not the chat. And please refrain from advertising your own business in the chat as a favor to others who are also listening. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, Tom Cooney, who's a partner with KMRD Partners in Warrington, Pennsylvania. And he is basically servicing the day-to-day needs of portfolios of small to medium-sized businesses, and he also manages their personal insurance lines division. Tom's been in business since 1986, and as his clients, risk manager and insurance brokers, Tom coordinates the negotiation of renewable coverage terms, conditions, pricing, claims, and loss control services, etc. I'm going to just turn it over to Tom so that he can give you a more thorough explanation of exactly what he does. And again, if you have a question, put it in the Q&A and we will handle it at the end. Tom?
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate the kind introduction, and good morning to everyone out there. It's my pleasure to be here to give you kind of a brief overview of what you should know about business liability insurance. So in addition to what Ed said, I have been in the business since 1986, and I also hold my certified insurance counselor's designation since 1994. So I've been doing this a long time, and very, very experienced and knowledgeable in all lines of business for the small to mid-sized business owner, not only locally, but nationally. We hold licenses in all 50 states. So, and I've got clients probably in 30 of the 50 states here in the US. So with that being said, we'll jump right in. What you should know about business liability insurance. There's multiple facets of what each and every business owner will need in order to protect themselves from not only the general public, but the plaintiff's bar out there from being sued. So the commercial general liability policy is really the front line of all business owners' protection. And the general liability policy protects you from bodily injury, property damage, personal and advertising injury that you may cause by your services, your business operations, or things that your employees may cause. It covers non-professional acts, negligent acts. That's key because many professionals need additional coverage called professional liability. Understanding this coverage is an important first step in managing your comprehensive general liability risks. So me personally, rather than getting into a lot of the insurance policy technobabble, I like to really teach more by real life examples. I think people understand real life examples and situations better than flipping through an insurance policy that oftentimes for the layperson can be very, very difficult to read and understand. So I'm going to give you a few examples of some claims that have occurred, situations in which your business could be responsible for paying various costs, such as medical bills, legal expenses, as well as compensatory and even punitive damages. So you could run into a situation where you have a customer or someone in the public that is visiting your business, and the customer trips and falls on loose flooring or a buckled carpet and is injured. They break a leg, they break an ankle. And there are numerous duties that you owe the public when they enter your building. And in most instances, if you run into a situation like that, your business will be held legally liable to pay for the pain and suffering and the lost wages and medical bills and other expenses associated with your client, your customer, or your client tripping and falling. Other areas that retail operations, more retail operations run into is a false arrest situation where someone shoplifts from your store and you stop them at the door, and you've got to be very, very careful that you are operating in line with the constitutional rights of every one of your customers that you may run into a situation that they could be stealing from you. We see multiple false arrest claims come in for the public stealing from our client base because they didn't do it correctly. So it's very, very important that if you are going to stop someone, that you do it correctly. But in the event that you are accused of it, in most instances, your general liability will pick up a false arrest claim. You could have run into a situation, let's say you're a contracting business, you're a painting or you're a construction business. You accidentally, one of your employees is at the customer's home and they leave the water running. And the water overflows and causes substantial property damage to the home. Or you cause a situation, happens frequently in the carpentry and the drywall business, where I just recently had a claim where a client of mine left the job several years ago, and as he was finish framing, a finish nail punctured a water line, sealed it, and then over the last couple of years, the nail actually rusted away and started leaking, causing property damage to the client's home. So several years later, we get a claim come in after the homeowner had a contractor remove the portion of the damaged ceiling and the wall and discovered what occurred several years ago. So the general liability, the contractor's general liability policy actually paid that claim. We've had a recent class action suit that was filed against the business owner, alleging that some of the advertising that they did constituted misleading information, and they were sued for that. So those are some of the situations that you can run into. So what does a general liability policy cover your business for? So middle of the page there, the comprehensive general liability policy will usually cover costs of your legal defense and will pay on your behalf all damages if you are found liable, up to the limits of your policy. The CGL policy is one of the most important insurance products due to the negative impact that a lawsuit can have on your business, and because such liability suits happen so frequently, the standard general liability policy includes the following. It includes coverage for bodily injury, property damage. It provides protection against losses of legal liability of insureds for bodily injury or property damage to others arising out of non-professional negligent acts or liability arising out of their premises or business operations. Mental injuries and emotional distress can be considered bodily injury, depending upon where you live, even in the absence of physical bodily harm. Workers' compensation and employment practices liability insurance are excluded, but can be purchased as separate policies. In addition, pollution is excluded and can be purchased as an endorsement. However, this coverage is very limited, and high-risk businesses should consider purchasing separate pollution policies. Liquor liability, professional liability, and other risks may also be excluded. An insurance professional can help you determine what additional policies and endorsements are right for your type of business. So let's talk a little bit about what personal injury is. And like a lot of what is in insurance policies, the word personal injury is a little bit misleading. Because personal injury in the insurance world is libel, slander, false arrest, infringement on a copyright, malicious prosecution, use of another's advertising idea, wrongful eviction, entry, invasion of privacy. So all of those items are covered by your general liability. So if you libel someone, if you say some things that you shouldn't really say, and you're sued for libel and slander, they're covered. False arrest is also, we touched on that, that's also covered. If you stop somebody trying to leave your store with things that they haven't paid for, or if you think that they're leaving your store with things that they haven't paid for, especially in the Metro Philadelphia area, many of those lawsuits, whether you caught the person stealing or not, they're going to sue you for not doing it the right way. So be very careful when you stop someone and accuse them of stealing merchandise. Infringing upon others' copyrights is also a big one. That one happens frequently, and we see those in the news frequently over the years, where a burger chain will put up a set of golden arches out in front of their burger place and call it McDougal's instead of McDonald's, and McDonald's has a copyright on the big yellow M, and you can't do that kind of stuff. If you try to maliciously prosecute someone, that's also covered if a lawsuit comes in. And then the advertising arena is also covered. If you steal somebody's ideas, infringe upon their trademarks, use advertising ideas that you're not entitled to or have already been used by someone else, you can be sued for that. For those of you that are in the renting of property to others, whether it's apartments or whether it's you're renting space to businesses, you got to really follow the rules when you try to evict somebody. You just can't walk into someone else's rental space that you're renting to someone that you have a lease with. You just can't enter their private space unannounced. So we see some claims like that come in, where a landlord will just invite themselves in without the permission of the tenant, and you can get yourself into trouble for that. One of the other items the general liability policy covers is limited coverage for medical payments that pays for injury sustained by non-employees caused by an accident that takes place on the policyholder's premises, or when exposed to the policyholder's business operations. Medical payments coverage can be triggered without legal action. This provides for prompt settlement of smaller medical claims without litigation. It's included in this general liability policy to pay for all necessary and reasonable medical, surgical, ambulance, hospital, professional nursing, and funeral expenses for a person while injured or killed in an accident taking place on the insured's premises or arising from the business operation of the insured. There is no defense or legal liability as there is with the bodily injury and property damage coverage, since it's provided on a no-fault basis. So essentially what this coverage does is, if somebody trips and falls on over their shoelaces on your premises, The medical payments portion will pay regardless of liability as a brinksmanship or a goodwill type of coverage, that, hopefully that it'll, by taking care of the medical bills, it won't go any further. Coverage on that end is limited to about, between $5,000 and $10,000 on most policies. And then if necessary, your general liability limits that you've purchased over top of that will kick in and defend and indemnify you for if there's allegations of negligence and a lawsuit arises. Some examples of some general liability claims. So around here in the wintertime, it snows, it gets cold, and you're responsible for clearing your parking lot or your sidewalk. So ice and snow caused the claimant to slip and fall in a parking lot, fracturing her hip. And this is a real life situation that happened within the last 2 years to a client of mine that owns a strip store, strip mall here locally. The case settled out of court for $325,000. Contractor installed new doors and doors inside of a home and will perform the finished work. Finished nail slightly pierced the water line. Several years later, the head of the finished nail rusted away and the line began leaking, causing property damage. The insurance company paid $15,000 in damages to the customer's home. The claimant attempted to rob a retail beer distributor. This is also a real claim that occurred with a beer distributor that I insured down in Delaware County, probably about 15 years ago. Our insured clerk shot and killed the robber. Unfortunately, the first shot hit him. The assailant took off, ran out the door. Our clerk followed him out the door and emptied the clip into his back, and hit him several times as he was running away. That case settled for right around $200,000 in legal fees. Our clerk, our retail clerk, was charged with murder, and fortunately or unfortunately, the clerk was exonerated in a court of law for the criminal activities. But the criminal and civil systems are two different court systems. The criminal system is for crimes, and the civil system is about money. So that one got very, very expensive in a hurry. So just because someone's robbing your store doesn't mean you can't be sued if you take physical action against the assailant. We've had numbers of these over the years. Alleged shoplifter sues retail store for excessive force when security guards tackled her leaving the store with stolen merchandise. Claimant fractured her wrist that required surgery. A Philadelphia jury awarded this woman $150,000 in damages because they felt that our security people roughed her up when she was running away. After they tried to stop her for not paying for a substantial amount of merchandise. The general contractor was sued when a subcontractor fell through an unsecured opening at a job site. This fellow was hurt very, very badly. $450,000 was awarded to the plaintiff. The next one is an example of an advertising infringement, trademark infringement. A retail home brewery supply company that I insured was sued by Heineken Beer for infringing upon their trademark. Our client unknowingly purchased counterfeit or knockoff Heineken neon beer signs with the Heineken logo on them and then placed them up for sale on his website. He bought these items from China, which they're notorious for, not paying for, the copyright fees so they can manufacture and sell this stuff. Our guy bought these. They were brought in directly overseas from China and delivered to him directly. Heineken sued my client and they were awarded $50,000 for infringing upon my client's trademark. Believe it or not, many of these large operations have several lawyers on staff general counsel that actually just do pretty much nothing but surf the website looking for surfing the World Wide Web looking for trademark and advertising infringements so they can go sue them. Auto repair shop did not tighten an oil plug on an oil pan after an oil change for a client. Oil leaked out of the car, causing the engine to seize, and the claimant they had to buy him a new motor and put a new motor in his car. So that cost $8,000. So there are just some of the examples that you can get into on the general liability side. So we kind of talked a little bit about professional liability, and for many professionals, if you are giving any type of advice whatsoever, you need a professional liability policy, because again, the general liability policy will cover your business for bodily injury or property damage only. So what is the difference? So the general liability policy covers you for physical risks of bodily injury and property damage, and the professional policy covers you for more abstract risks such as errors, omissions in the services that your business provides. So you make a mistake. If you're an accountant, you give a client the wrong tax advice and it costs some money. Well, I thought, Mr. Accountant, you said I could deduct this from my taxes, and the IRS is now coming back to me 2 years later, hitting me for interest, penalty, fees, because you told me I could deduct this and they're telling me I can't. Or you're a doctor and someone goes in for an operation and you make a mistake. Your appendix is on the right side and he makes the incision on your left side and then realizes his or her mistake. So it's for those type of things. And every professional has that type of issue, whether you're an insurance agent, whether you're a computer or IT professional, whether you're a contractor. We all have those type of exposures where you can get yourself into a situation where you're giving someone advice or acting in a professional manner and you don't do what you're supposed to do correctly. So that's the difference between a professional liability claim and a professional liability claim. So middle of the page there, professional liability insurance is also known as errors and omissions insurance that help protect your business and clients from financial damages. Again, not bodily injury and not property damage from professional services that you provide. Professional liability can help cover the business's legal costs. Some more examples here. If a bookkeeper makes a clerical error that costs their clients thousands of dollars, that's a covered claim. If a web developer makes a mistake on a client's e-commerce site resulting in missed sales opportunities, that's a professional liability claim. If an accountant files incorrect tax return for their clients resulting in penalties and fees, that's a professional liability claim. I've seen contractors get sued because they go out and they'll go to a client's house let's say they're trying to sell their house, and a realtor says, hey, can you just run up on the roof and certify the roof for us? Roofer goes up and says, yeah, the roof looks good. Or they hire a plumber to certify the plumbing in the house. And then after the new buyer buys the house and an issue occurs with whatever system that they've reviewed, they get sued because the roof leaked or the plumbing leaked or the electricity didn't work correctly. So those are the type of situations that can result in professional liability claims. And it's somewhere along the line, almost all of us are giving advice, or we need to act in a professional manner. Another professional contracting type claim that's not listed here that a contractor can get involved in. I had a framer, a home builder, guy was framing out houses. One of his guys didn't read the blueprints correctly, and put a load bearing wall about 11 inches in a direction that it shouldn't have been. He missed it by almost a foot. And the home, after it was finished, part of the second floor started to sag because he was off by a foot. And the wall was constructed correctly, but the issue was that he did not read the blueprint correctly, and the general liability policy insurer denied the claim, saying it was a professional issue, and they were right. And fortunately, this contractor had contractor's professional liability. So all of us really need to do our due diligence on who should take out a professional liability policy. It's not just for the white collar type workers that are the doctors and the lawyers and the stockbrokers and whatnot. Many white and blue collar operations need professional liability coverage. So these are some of the examples that carry professional liability all the time, that they can't get away without it. Lawyers, consultants, accountants, home inspectors, technology professionals. I failed to put in there medicine, like doctors, dentists, anybody that's working in the healthcare arena. Nurses have to carry professional liability. And in almost all of these instances, you can't do business. You can't get licensed with the various states that you're doing business in without having errors and omissions or professional liability or malpractice coverage. So here's some more real life examples of some professional liability claims that we've experienced over the years. $70,000 was paid due to a computer consultant was hired to create a new computer system for a client. The client alleged that the new system was not functional and corrupted the data that was in their current system. So a lawsuit was filed, and a $70,000 settlement was a result of that professional error and omission. $225,000, a mortgage broker failed to process a loan application on a timely basis, which resulted in the borrower losing an agreed upon interest rate. Rates increased, and the borrower was unable to secure a comparable rate, resulting in a significant excess in interest paid over the life of the loan. So basically the person taking out the mortgage sued the mortgage broker because they didn't lock in when they told them to lock in the low rate. 1.15 million, a safety consultant professional liability claim resulted when the claimant alleged that our insured's critical inspection report was not comprehensive enough to have prompted the client to take precautionary measures to avoid an explosion that resulted in one fatality and one severe injury. So safety consultant came in, did the review, and failed to point out that the system that caused the problem, that should have been pointed out, and they failed to do so, and a very, very large award on that case. $105,000, a medical billing company received a lawsuit from a client for failing to submit and collect medical billings for patient care to insurance companies on a timely basis. I think that one kind of speaks for itself. Another large one, just under 2 million, a computer consultant was assessing a client with their credit card processing from one vendor to another. It was alleged that the insured failed to follow their own guidelines and procedures during the process and mishandled sensitive account data information. $205,000 was paid. A property manager on a professional liability claim was filed involving a class action lawsuit alleging that the insured reviewed the application's eviction reports without their consent. So you can't do that. You have to be very, very careful with anything doing with evictions. They can get very, very costly in a hurry. And $240,000, a private school hired a management consultant to assess them with employee recruitment activities. The suit alleges that the insured performed an inadequate background check and failed to identify the employee's criminal history, which included a sexual assault on a minor. So we had a school that hired a person that had a sexual assault in their past, and so a lawsuit arose out of that one. So another very, it's a whole nother, could be a whole nother topic, but when you are hiring employees, do your due diligence on your folks. I just sat on jury duty recently where a extermination contractor hired a guy who had a prior sexual assault, went into a home locally here. His employer sent him to this place, and he sexually assaulted a 12-year-old boy while he was in the house, supposedly doing a bug extermination, and sexually assaulted the homeowner's 12-year-old son. That business is going to get, that extermination business is going to get sued out of existence on that claim. So be very, very careful as to who you hire, and make sure you do lengthy, detailed background checks when you're hiring employees. Next, we'll talk a little bit about employment practices liability insurance. Very, very important coverage. And employment practices liability coverage protects your business for wrongful hiring, denial of natural justice, defamation, misleading representation or advertising, unfair contracts, harassment, discrimination, sexual harassment, with respect to employment, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. And also now, very important coverage, you want to make sure that you're insured for those same acts and allegations on a third-party basis for folks other than your employees or your volunteers. So boil that's a large statement. So boil it all down. This policy protects you from acts or allegations of you discriminated against me because of my race, my color, my creed, my sexual orientation. You fired me for those reasons. You fired me over my race, my color, my creed, my sexual orientation, my disability. You didn't hire me for any of those reasons. So it's not just firing somebody. We've had numerous cases where folks have sued our client because they didn't get the job. And the allegation has been they didn't get the job because of the color of their skin or their religious beliefs or their age or whatever it may be, their sexual orientation or whatever the allegation may be, if it's covered under the policy. So you're really walking in a minefield every day with your employees, that they can sue you for those things if you don't have best practices with your hiring and firing capabilities. So what does the policy covers? It'll cover you for attorney fees, settlement costs, legal judgments, administrative and other court costs. But employment practices liability does not cover civil fines, punitive damages, wages, and that's another big thing today. Is a lot of employees, when they sue you for age discrimination or racial discrimination or whatever it may be, you fired me because of this, they're also going to ask for a lot of lost wages based on hourly pay. That's almost in every case these days. So wages, if you didn't pay them the correct way, that's not covered under the employment practices liability policy. Instances of intentional employer wrongdoing, damage caused to your employee's property, alleged injuries to the employees, litigation regarding unemployment benefits, and disputes surrounding workers' compensation benefits. So the employment practices policy, very, very important for you to have today. And we can get into some examples of, again, some real life situations that employers have gotten themselves into when, firing or hiring employees or just in the day-to-day operation of their business. So the first one is an age discrimination lawsuit that was brought by a highly paid 62-year-old sales representative who was employed by the insured. He was terminated for not meeting his sales quotas. Despite layoffs and cutbacks at the company, there was no documentation to show that the plaintiff was a poor performer. A settlement of $540,000 was reached. So if you're going to fire somebody for poor performance and not meeting their sales quotas, you better have documentation of that. In this case, they just wanted to get rid of this guy because he was making a lot of money, and you can't do that. They wanted to keep his client base and bring somebody in much younger, pay them much less, and it blew up on them. Sexual harassment and wrongful termination. Several female employees at a company complained that the CEO was sexually harassing them. As required by law, the president proceeded to investigate the complaints. Within 1 month of the start of the investigation, and without apparent backing of the board of directors, the president was terminated by the CEO under the pretext of performance issues. This was despite the fact that he was given a raise a few months earlier. The president filed a separate wrongful termination suit due to the conflict between the board of directors and the CEO. The settlement and the defense cost exceeded the policy limits, it was a $2 million policy. So they really got popped on that. And that does not include the actions that were brought by the female employees. This was just for the president, who was let go by the CEO because he had the audacity to essentially accuse them of sexual harassment and investigate the sexual harassment claims that were brought against the CEO of the company. So do yourselves a favor. You be very, very diligent in that arena, because what you may think is a compliment to somebody, they may not take it as a compliment. They may take it as a sexual advance. And even today, you have to be it's not just, we're not just dealing with male, female anymore, or female, male anymore. We're dealing female, female, male, male. The world is a much, much different place. And we've really got to be careful with what we say and what we do and how we act in the workplace, because it can put you out of business. And in this instance, it exceeded the policy limits, and that organization had to dig deeply into their own pockets to pay on top of the insurance that they bought because they didn't have enough. Racial discrimination. A group of Indian descent applicants sued a private retail store for ethnic and racial discrimination after learning they had all been denied employment strictly based on their race and ethnic background. Defense costs and settlement on that one exceeded $200,000. Retaliation claim. The executive assistant and to the chief financial officer of a company was terminated for divulging confidential information to staff regarding impending company layoffs. A suit was brought by the assistant for retaliation and sexual harassment, as she claimed the CFO always made suggestive comments and improperly touched her. defending the CFO cost $150,000. A religious discrimination claim. A claim was brought by a former employee for religious discrimination. She alleged hiring practices of the insured were unlawful because they stated they would only hire Christian workers. Once it was learned that the plaintiff was not Christian, she was passed up for promotion. A settlement of $52,000 was reached. Disability discrimination claims are huge these days. Believe it or not, alcohol and drug abuse is a protected disability under the Americans with Disability Acts. So be very, very careful if you fire or will not hire an employee based on alcohol and drug addiction. Make sure you consult an attorney before terminating anybody like that. But an employee went out on medical leave for treatment of an illness. When he was ready to return to work, the insurer told him his position had been filled by someone else and his job was no longer available. You can't do that. He filed suit for lost wages, emotional distress, and violation of the disability discrimination statutes. The defense cost and settlement was greater than $100,000. The very beginning of the presentation, we're talking a little bit offline about cyber liability coverage. Cyber liability coverage is very, very important for all businesses today, regardless of your size, whether you're a one-person operation or a $10,000 or 10,000 person operation. Very, very important coverage to have. So liability, cyber liability insurance can cover the costs associated with data breaches and cyber attacks on your business. Those costs can include such things as lost income due to a cyber event, costs associated with notifying customers affected by the breach, cost of recovering compromised data, costs for repairing damaged computer systems, and more. So cyber coverage can be crucial and a safeguard against devastating financial consequences of a cyber attack. Many insurers often customize insurance solutions depending upon your business's level of risk, with coverage options available to address forensic investigations. So how deep did the hackers get into your computer system and how much information did they get? It covers litigation expenses, so the cost of legal fees that you incur because you were attacked on a cyber basis, regulatory defense expenses and fines. Believe it or not, the federal and state and local governments are not your friends when you're attacked because they feel that you should be doing everything possible to make sure that your information and your computers are secure. So oftentimes the federal, state, and local government will come in after you've been attacked and add insult to injury and fine you and penalize you because you've been hacked. Crisis management expenses are also covered under most policies. So that will cover reasonable fees, costs, and expenses incurred by the named entity on the policy and approved by the insurer for consulting services provided by public relations firms or law firms to named entity in response to the crisis or the event. So they pay for some PR expenses to help soften the blow if your name ends up in the paper that you've been attacked on a cyber basis. Business interruption is normally included. So if you say suffer a ransom attack and you're down for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks or however long it is, usually the limit is a 6 or a 12-month limit that you get. It will pump revenue through the front door to keep you solvent until you're up and running again. Cyber extortion, ransom claims are almost all policies, cyber policies are covered events. So insurance companies will pay the ransom to get the encryption keys so that you can get back up and running. So if somebody comes in, shuts your system down, and the extortion claims are big these days. They get in, and they just disable your system. You can't operate, you can't work. Your computer system is dead. So the hackers contact you and they tell you, for $1 million, we'll give you the encryption key, and you can get yourself back up and running once you pay us $1 million. So the cyber extortion, the ransom claims, there's on almost every policy, there's coverage there for up to the limit that you bought. And then most of them also include betterment, where the insuring agreement provides coverage for the cost to improve your computer system after a cyber or security breach, because the insurance company doesn't want it to happen again, right? They identify the vulnerabilities and whatnot that led to the breach. So it's also in the insurance company's best interest to make sure that your business locks it down and makes it as difficult as possible for any hacker to get in the future. So here are some examples of, again, some real life opportunity or real life claims that have occurred. There's an unauthorized access. An international computer hacking group gained access electronically to computerized cash registers of a large restaurant chain and stole credit card information of 5,000 customers, starting a flood of fraudulent purchases around the world. So that was all covered under their cyber liability policy. Theft of digital assets. A regional retailer contracted with a third-party service provider. A burglar stole 2 laptops from the service provider containing the data of over 800,000 clients of the retailer. Under applicable notification of laws, the retailer, not the service provider, was required to notify the affected individuals. So imagine that. You've got to pay to notify 800,000 clients. The expense on that is enormous. And you can see there that the expense incurred for the notification, the crisis management to customers, just the expense was nearly $5 million. So again, those expenses are usually covered up to the limit that you purchase under your cyber liability policy. Privacy breach. An employee of a rehabilitation center improperly disposed of 4,000 client records in violation of the center's privacy policy. The records contain social security numbers, credit card and debit card numbers, names, addresses, telephone numbers, as well as sensitive medical information. The center settled the claim with the state of Massachusetts and agreed to pay fines and penalties imposed by the state, as well as extend $890,000 in customer redress funds for credit monitoring on behalf of the victims. So that one got very, very expensive as well. Theft of digital assets. A home healthcare organization had backup tapes, laptops, and disks containing social security numbers, clinical and demographic information. And in a small number of cases, patient financial data was stolen. In total, over 365,000 patient records were exposed. The organization settled with the state attorney general, providing patients with free credit monitoring, credit restoration to patients that were victims of identity fraud, and reimbursement to patients for direct losses that resulted from the data breach. The organization also was required to revamp its security policies, implemented technical safeguards, and conduct random compliance audits. That one hurt. Human error. Human error is frequent in these cyber claims, where, and in this one, a nonprofit Community Action Corporation printed 2 1099 forms on one piece of paper. So they used the back and the front when they should have just used the front. An employee was supposed to separate the forms and send each to its rightful owner. Instead, one person received both copies. The mistake sent tax forms and social security numbers to strangers. Approximately 50% of the landlords who work within the Community Action Corporation received their forms in addition to private information of others. And we already kind of touched a little bit on the cyber extortion. It's a huge threat here in the States, but a US-based information technology company contracted with an overseas software vendor The contracted vendor left universal administrator defaults installed on the company server for a hacker for hire was paid $20,000 to exploit the vulnerability. And the hacker advised if the requested payment was not made, he would post the records of millions of registered users on a blog available for all to see. The extortion expense and the extortion monies, this one was still open at the time I put this presentation together, but this claim did exceed well over $2 million. So extremely important today, regardless of the size of your business. The cyber coverage is a must-have. The last two, human error, an employee of a private high school mistakenly distributed email via email the names, social security numbers, birth dates, and medical information and of students, faculty, and whatnot, creating a privacy breach. Overall, 1,250 individuals' information was compromised. And finally, a malicious code claim. The juvenile released a computer worm directing infected computers to launch a denial of service attack against a regional computer consulting and application outsourcing firm. The infection caused an 18-hour shutdown of the entity's computer system. The computer consulting and application outsourcing firm incurred extensive costs and expense to repair and restore the system, as well as business interruption expenses, which totaled approximately $875,000. So I think that's a real wide range of cyber examples that could hurt your business in the event one of those type of claims comes your way. So that's me there. My contact information is listed. And in the insurance world, as in any world, I mean, price is always important in any transaction. But cheap insurance by no means is the best insurance. I see it all the time where, and one policy from carrier to carrier is never the same. It's not like buying a gallon of milk. So buying your auto policy from Allstate is not the same as buying your auto policy from State Farm or Selective or Chubb or AIG. They're all different qualities of products. So, you kind of get what you pay for. And as Benjamin Franklin once said, the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten. So I see some questions.
Yes, we've got a bunch of them. But I want to start out with, how much insurance should you get? How do you know how much you should get? Based upon your stories, it looks like you need $10 million.
Ed, that's a great question, and I get that all the time. And the answer is, I don't know. It just depends. The hope is that you never use it at all.
Right.
The hope is that you pay and you never have a problem. But in today's age, most business owners are going to be sued several times over the course of doing business. What I recommend to people is to buy as much as you can within your budget, because you just don't know. Because you're right, some of these things can get out of control in a hurry, but it doesn't do you any good if you and your business are so insurance poor that you can't afford to pay the premiums and pay the bills. So my recommendation is to buy as much as you can that fits into your budget, because a one or two man operation can get themselves into a $10-15 million claim just as easily as a 1,000 person business can get themselves into a $10 or a $15 million claim. So
what you're saying is, sit down with whomever you use and work out what it looks like people could be suing you for, and trying to cover those areas as best you can with as much insurance as you can afford.
Correct. Really, the best idea, correct, is to sit down with an insurance professional and walk through the exposures of your individual business identify those exposures, and then make the decision on what options you want to insure and buy insurance for, to transfer the financial risk to an insurance company, and then which exposures you feel somewhat comfortable with self-insuring or
Hmm.
or buying lesser values of coverage.
And so here's one. How do I get insurance for a nonprofit consultant?
That shouldn't be a problem. I do a lot of nonprofit organizations. We've got a wide breadth of carriers that will take all sorts of nonprofit organizations. So we have a lot of our private insurers will have nonprofit programs, and then I also have access to the Association of Nonprofits Insurance Companies, which is believe it or not, is a nonprofit insurance company that insures nonprofits that are kind of a lot tougher to, that may be a little more tougher, I guess, to insure than some of the Main Street type nonprofit organizations out there exist. So I don't really see an issue with that one. Be happy to help if you want to reach out to me offline.
Okay, good. So there is insurance available. It's a matter of what you need. So here's
Right.
my business does consulting, and I have no office slash business slash storefronts. Do I need general liability insurance? How would it help me in my situation?
So great question. Yes, you do, because I would imagine that you're operating the business out of your home. Your homeowner's policy, all homeowners policies have a business pursuits exclusion. If you're, so whatever the business is, you could easily have several scenarios that could impact you. I have currently have a lady that I know who's she distributes beauty products for one of the larger well-known names, and she did not have her own general liability policy, didn't think that she needed it. The UPS guy showed up in the winter at her home where she operates her business from, and the UPS guy fell on the front steps of her house and sued her and her husband, and then also sued her business because the delivery was being made to her business. So
Hmm.
the lawyer figured out, we're going to sue the homeowner and we're going to sue the business. So her business had no coverage because she did not have her own general liability policy. So the homeowner's policy did not defend or indemnify
Oh
her
boy.
business. By the time it was all said and done, this went to court, went through trial, and it was a 50-50 split for negligence between she and her husband and her business. So her homeowner's insurance company only paid half the verdict. And the other half, they're still trying to figure out what to do. This one was relatively recent. So
Huh.
there's all sorts of scenarios you can get yourself into on a general liability basis that can result in the bodily injury or property damage of someone else. I had a small accountant, one-man accountant, operated out of his house years ago, and he took a client of his out to lunch to one of the local malls and was coming down the escalator at lunch
Oh
and
boy.
literally fell down the steps, like fell down the escalator and wiped out a little old lady on the way down. And because he was working, his business got sued. And thank goodness he had a general liability policy. So those are the kinds of things you can get yourself involved in. And a small consulting business, the premium is not going to be much. I mean, you're looking, I would think, one person operation, you're probably looking at a few $100s a year.
Huh.
So relatively inexpensive.
Here's one. I think you've kind of answered this. Finding an agent who sells professional liability, I guess insurance, has been very difficult for me. Where do you go to find such a provider? Besides yourself, I'm sure that almost every other insurance agent offers that.
Yeah, I mean, depending upon what the profession is,
Right.
but many professions get their professional liability coverage through one of their professional associations. Um, like doctors oftentimes buy it through the AMA. Lawyers oftentimes buy it through the Bar Association program. And that's one of the benefits of joining the various associations for the various professions. Um, but I've done, and most brokers and agents like myself that I know, I've sold everything from medical malpractice coverage down to coverage for IT people, consultants of all sorts. So if you're having a problem finding somebody to help you with professional liability, again, that's another one I would just recommend. Reach out to me offline and we can discuss it. And I would highly doubt that you know I'd have a problem finding coverage. I just placed coverage for a computer consultant doing work for the FAA on the various landing and takeoff aspects of radar systems. So very, very complicated, really scary stuff for insurers. So, I think I'd be able to find a home for it if you want to reach out to me.
And here's one, it's kind of interesting. Our company develops a product that is used under a license agreement. Why would we need professional liability insurance?
It depends what the product is. And if there's any design that was done, that I guess would be my first question, is if it's done under a licensing agreement, depending upon what the product is, who designed it, who maintains it, who installs it, who services it. So depending upon what the product is, I'd have to know a little bit more about the product, I guess, to properly answer that question.
Right, that makes sense. Here's one that's kind of interesting. I guess the person is an engineer designs commercial shelving. The shelves fail, killing someone. Is it professional liability or general liability because it's a bodily injury / death?
Right. One of the real keys of professional liability is that any professional liability policy, in many instances, you want to have an endorsement on the policy, which is called contingent bodily injury coverage. But in the professional world, in your scenario, if you design shelving and somebody is killed by that shelving, in most instances, the lawsuit is going to allege that the product was defective because it was not designed or engineered correctly. It shouldn't be able to fall in the eyes of the law. So that allegation is going to get made, and you'll need, in my opinion, it could be a little bit of both. It just depends what comes out in the court process, in the legal process, but you're going to need to have both coverages, because there's going to be allegations of general liability, and there's going to also be allegations of professional liability. And oftentimes they're not mutually exclusive in a lawsuit. You could actually have both, where you need both because you're being accused of both in one instance. And in the example that you just used, of the shelves falling down, I think the attorneys would be accessing both your general liability and your professional policy, because oftentimes, the lawsuits that I see come in have 20, 30, 40 different counts, which means allegations. against someone in a lawsuit. So many of those trigger different policies, and oftentimes it's not uncommon to have multiple policies react to an individual lawsuit.
Here's one. This is very interesting. With cannabis becoming legal in many states, but still federally illegal, are there any special insurance requirements or concerns with providing equipment or services to the cannabis industry?
Believe it or not, there's a handful of insurance companies out there that are actively looking to place coverage for the various aspects in the cannabis industry. So the insurance is regulated at the state level, not at the federal level. So the last stop for any agreement or disagreement in the insurance world is the various state supreme courts. It does not move past the state level. So if cannabis is legal in the state in which the cannabis business is doing business, there are no, from an insurance standpoint, there are no federal guidelines that affect the insurance industry. And there's numerous insurers out there that are more than happy to place liability coverage, products liability coverage, professional liability coverage, and whatnot for the cannabis industry.
Okay. Here's one. It's kind of interesting. For a small part-time garage-based business with very low product/service liability risks, will homeowners policy protect against trips and falls, or would the business activity be an issue?
The homeowner's policy is never going to pay for any business that you're running out of the house. It's just not. So if you're repairing cars or repairing vacuum cleaners or whatever it may be at your house, you need to get commercial insurance to ensure that business. If anything happens at your home and you're running a business out of it, it's not covered. You're going to find out the hard way. And I have numerous people that have been in that situation. So whatever type of repair work you're doing, you should get the proper insurance to insure you against that, because the homeowner's policy is not going to provide you any coverage.
Should a cleaning business LLC have a professional insurance, policy, or just a general policy?
Yeah, I think you should have a professional liability policy as well on a contractor's basis. Also, cleaning businesses should have what's called bailees coverage as well, because all general liability policies exclude properties and locations that are under your care, custody, and control. So especially for janitors, that they may go in at night where they're the only ones in the building. So that entire building is under your care, custody, and control. So if you damage something, you need specific coverage for that. Oftentimes too, they'll put, I've seen janitors, spray something on something that it has a bad reaction to, where they ruin the surface, or they ruin a television set, or they ruin something. And that gets to be a real gray area as to, was it a professional claim, or was it a bodily injury or property damage claim? So yeah, I think it would be best that at least you look at it and put a price on it. It would be wise.
Mm-hmm. All right. Is it possible to outline a little about the differences of hazard insurance and property insurance?
In my mind, they're the same.
Okay.
Oftentimes, they refer to property coverage as hazard insurance. But property coverage is, in my opinion, doing this is relatively cut and dry. The property coverage covers your tangible assets, things that are real, the building that you own, or if you don't own the building, the stuff that you own that's in the rent, the tenant occupied building that you're in. You're paying the landlord, but you bring in your desks and chairs and computers and your equipment and your inventory or whatever it may be. So, you always want to buy the best coverage form, which is called the special coverage form under the commercial policy, that will adequately cover your tangible assets. So in the event of a fire or a hurricane or, some type of disaster, that it's all gone. Somebody comes in and steals it, or that you have coverage for the property that belongs to you. So.
Okay, good. So here we go. Do you have a list of business insurance companies? I think that they have to contact you offline for that.
Yeah, I can get you a list. We represent well over 50 A-rated insurance companies at this point. So yeah, I mean, I can get you a list of the carriers that we have that we do business with directly. And then I've got thousands of companies that I do business with that I access through brokerage houses as well. So
Right. I
very,
assume.
very few people that I am unable to help.
All right. This is kind of interesting. How can I find an agent for business insurance, and where should I start?
You're looking at them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You can start with you, and then they don't like you for some reason. Yeah,
Give
go
me
on the
a
internet.
call. Reach out to me offline, and I'll my contact information's there. Just
Right.
give me a call and we'll talk.
Right, exactly. Here's one. I'm curious to this one. Has an insurance agent ever been sued for not recommending enough coverage or the wrong coverage?
Yes,
Okay.
happens all the time.
Oh, boy.
So I just had a discussion with an attorney friend of mine yesterday who has a client who's involved in a situation where that was essentially the allegation, but whether or not it materializes, I don't know. But yes, insurance agents like myself also have to have errors and omissions coverage, right? Just because it's, if I'm not telling somebody that they should be buying cyber coverage and they have a multi-million-dollar cyber liability claim come in, I didn't do my job. If an employee sues their employer for wrongfully terminating them, and I didn't tell my client about the positives of buying an employment practices liability policy, I wouldn't be doing my job. So yes, absolutely. If an agent failed to tell you about an exposure, you need to talk to an attorney about it. But yeah, you can go after an insurance agent for that.
All right. What is the best type of insurance for a church? And what type of lawsuits, I guess, should they look out for?
Yeah, churches are unique exposures. I insure a number of those as well. There's companies out there that specialize in those. We have Selective, Zurich, Chubb, Church Mutual, just to name a few. We have others that'll do churches, but as far as churches goes, in addition to all the items that I just described to you in this presentation, churches also need pastoral professional coverage, okay, because they give advice as well. Churches today need sexual abuse and molestation coverage. They should also look at crisis response coverage, or what we call active shooter coverage, unfortunately, because depending upon what faith this is, they may be more of a target than some others. There's been some really horrendous things in the last couple of years that have occurred in various houses of worship over just pure hate. So that's important. And then you also will need directors and officers coverage, because the church is most likely a nonprofit organization. All nonprofits should have directors and officers coverage, because the board members of the church, as well as the pastor or whatever you call the person of the religion that's running it on a day-to-day basis, they can be sued individually. So they need what's called directors and officers coverage. So I would make sure that you jump in on an insurance carrier that has a very broad and active houses of worship book of business, and a specific houses of worship product that includes all of those coverages that I just outlined.
All right. So here's an interesting one. If I work from home sometimes and an office outside of the home, should I have general insurance for both?
I would, yes. Well, no, you can have one policy for both. So if you have a business that you have bricks and mortar, you rent a space or whatever it may be, you own a building, and then you work out of your house. If you're working for your business, the liability policy, the general liability policy, will extend anywhere in the US, Canada, and US territories. So you really only need one general liability policy for your business. A little overkill would be to list your home location. They're not going to charge you anything for it, but list your home location as a scheduled location. But you should be granted coverage for your business, as long as you have a general liability policy, for liabilities that occur, bodily injury and property damage wise, anywhere in the US, Canada, and US territories.
If you're selling hemp pain cream, would general liability be sufficient?
I'd probably have to learn a little bit more, but I think that they potentially, because of the medicinal aspect of it, I would think that they'd want some sort of professional liability coverage as well. That if someone ever came back to them and said, this didn't do what you said it was going to do. You said it was going to take away the pain, and it didn't. So I think I'd have to learn a little bit more about the product, but based on all pharmaceutical companies and pharmaceutical salespeople and distributors all have professional liability coverage, and I think that's where the hemp industry is going, is more on a medicinal aspect. So yeah, I think you'd probably be best carrying it.
This, I guess, contacting you might be the answer. I've been trying to find someone to provide business insurance to me. Are there any companies that you can refer, I guess, him to contact or her to contact?
Yeah, it depends what the business is. So again, yeah, reach out to me offline. My contact information's there. Give me a call. See if I can help you. I mean, like I said, there's very few people with the size and scope of our organization. There's very, very few people I can't help. So yeah, give me a call.
All right, I'm going to combine these two questions because I think they're from the same person. What if a state register agent and more, and one company is using my business address? Who is liability if something will happen? Or happen will, I guess they said. If I am a registered agent and different companies are using my address, is there something, if something happens, who is responsible? It's kind of an involved legal question more than an insurance question. isn't
Yeah,
it?
I don't really understand the question, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
So
neither do
whoever
I.
that is, if you want to give me a call, see if I can answer it for you. I'll get more details on it.
Right. Yeah, that's I think requires a little bit more.
But just to touch base, it's always up to judge and jury to determine who's liable. Unfortunately, in the society in which we live, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, but you can sue anybody for anything in the US.
Yeah.
So in most instances, if you're even remotely involved and a lawsuit arises, you're getting sued. The lawyers just come in and throw a hand grenade in the room, and they sue everybody.
Yeah.
So if you're a registered agent and whoever you're representing gets sued, you're going to get sued too.
Yeah. Right. A question here is, which area do you serve, and do you serve the Lehigh Valley? I believe you do serve the Lehigh. You're here, right?
Yep. Yeah. We're down in Warrington. So I've got clients all over the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We do business in all 50 states. I personally have clients that are out in California. I've got clients in Hawaii. I've got clients in Texas. I've got clients in Minnesota. I mean, I've got clients that are all over the place, to be honest with you. So, like I said, we hold licenses in all 50 states. So, state borders and boundaries aren't really no concern to us. And I've got plenty of clients up in the Lehigh Valley.
Okay, great. Well, you know what? We're right at our appointed time, and you've answered 20 questions, literally. So first of all, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are listening in, don't forget you'll be getting a copy of the transcript and the slides in short order, so to speak. I also want to remind you that next week we have one on the 20th, we have a webinar called Go Sell Something, which is very interesting, and followed on the 27th by Expense Reduction, How to Do It. I think you'll find that also interesting. Again, thank you so much, Tom, for your time and effort, and we'll be speaking to you soon. Thank you again.
Enjoyed it, everyone. Thank you.
Okay.